Hello everyone, greetings from the 7th of Nero, AJ here, and continuing the faction overviews, we have the folks of Kith, Kriel and Kin, followed by the set of minions that I'm not entirely sure how to categorize other than unaligned, that is, those who are not natively part of the Thornfall or Blindwater Pacts, so they're mostly human or races not native to Emorin, with the occasional elf and even dwarf mixed in. While the Trollbloods are most definitely a self-contained faction, the unaligned minions are anything but self-contained, and not least because there aren't that many of them, but also they don't have any warlocks or war beasts that can be freely taken in major faction battle groups. I'll likely reiterate this with the intros for the various mercenary subfactions and minions proper, but owing to the differences between how the mercenary contracts and minion packs were originally constructed back in Mark II days, there was always going to be a set of minions that didn't quite fit in, something that didn't affect the mercenaries. To wit, Dahlia, Brun and Lanissa are listed as minions, but were not included in either packed army compositions back when the Minions Forces of book was first released, though themes did and do allow them to be taken alongside full minion warlocks, as well as other factions obviously. The core components of the two main sub-factions within minions will be covered at a later date. Trollblood society is composed of 5 closely related but distinct species, which are, from smallest to largest, Whelp, Pygmy, Trollkin, Fullblood and Dire. But sometimes the great and terrifying Troll Kings can be called upon to join battle. Summoning the Kings, which dwarf Dire Trolls much as Dire Trolls dwarf Pygmy Trolls, is a most rare and perilous venture. Thus they are not what one would normally call part of Trollblood society per se, related though they may be. As the most intelligent and the wisest, the Trollkin comprise the majority of the Trollblood forces that take to the field, as well as their leadership, while full-blood trolls provide a substantial concentration of unbridled brute force in an army from the kriels. Pygmy trolls, or pigs as they're generally known, while intelligent after their own fashion, are more a mischievous and crafty sort, often too much so for a conventional force, and more is the case as they have none of a Trollkin's brawn, replacing it with a certain guile. Dire trolls are similar to their full-blood cousins, but while undoubtedly effective in battle, are troublesome out of it. Should their handlers be complacent, they may succumb to their notorious tempers and angrily eat anything within grasping range until sated. On the other hand, whelps are... how should I put this sensibly? Whelps are the semi-sentient offcuts of larger troll species, the result of the biologically incomprehensible regenerative capabilities of the Trollbloods, living their short lives with childish glee and reckless ignorance. And for some dire trolls, whelps serve as entertainment and food in equal capacity, mid-battle or otherwise. And lastly, Troll Kings and Control are not things one tries to consider in unison, much more so than with Dire Trolls, so none but the strongest and most knowledgeable of Trollkin warlocks consider the long-term possibilities the Kings may provide to a war effort. Naturally, the full-blood and dire trolls have their varieties, and being an adaptive species, their prowess in combat is a reflection of where they grew and attained maturity, turning the privations they suffer over the course of their lives into a means of doing battle. And yet, there are those full-blood trolls who are less rustic and have lived side by side with the Trollkin for a long time, partaking with them in their daily lives, and as a result have gained a small modicum of even temperament and intelligence to bear arms effectively. When they fight, they do so with weapons and armor crafted by their Trollkin neighbors or secured by other means. In some cases, this even applies to the hulking dire trolls, but this is unsurprisingly much less common. But, as befits their sentience as compared to their cousins, the Trollkin have the most variety and responsibility in what they do. While most Trollblood species, including the pigs to a large extent, are often only concerned with where their next meal comes from, the Trollkin take it upon themselves to make sure that all are well fed, that the Kriel prospers, and that brawling amongst the Kriel's warriors and war beasts remains as non-lethal as possible, except to the whelps, that is. Kriels, akin to what humans would call tribes, are led by a council of elders, representatives from those aspects most important to the daily running of the Kriel. Also an integral part of this council is the chieftain, the military leader who acknowledges his or her place as leader only in times when the Kriel's warriors must take up arms against an outside threat. In times of peace, the elders deliberate over all matters, whether it be allocation of resources, building homes, diplomacy and agriculture. But when war comes to the Kriel, its warband coalesces. First and foremost within a Kriel's warband is the chieftain, greatest among the Kriel's heroes, who themselves are the greatest of the champions and warders. This elite is the nucleus around which the Kriel warriors gather and take their inspiration from. Supporting them are the Trollkin from the various sorceress traditions, whether rune-shapers, shamans, or sorcerers who leverage the blessings of Dunya to aid their brothers and sisters in battle in what ways that they can. Further, there are those heroes who embody all that is right in a Trollkin and take it just far enough for it not to be considered too far. These are the Fellcallers, blessed with a hefty set of lungs to exhort their fellow warriors in battle with song and battle cry, and kill enemies with the same song and battle cry. Like Brag, their legendary forebear, they are an arrogant breed and only just fall short of angering chieftains with their borderline excessive fornicating, drinking, and brawling, a point of which would be a source of wonder to humans if it were mere hyperbole. And yet, for all their differences in role and stature, all warriors and heroes, even and perhaps especially the chieftain, will pay their respects to the Kriel stone, a sacred reliquary upon which the stone scribes record the greatest sacrifices and heroic deeds of the Kriel's warriors. Hundreds of years of reverent prayer to Dunya has seen her bless many Kriel stones with a warding that extends to any Trollkin that can see it carried aloft through battle and take inspiration from its presence. So does this assembly form the basis of virtually every Kriel's traditional warband. Some warbands are supported by companies of the especially smart and crafty pigs who, thanks to the evolving relationship between Trollkin and pig, often take on a specialist role that involves some sort of sneaking around, or, failing that, a lot of gleeful gunfire. In recent times, though, the Kriels have had their independence encroached upon, and many have formed loose confederations for their collective safety as tribal attitudes change. Such confederations include the Kriels of the Thornwood and the Kriels of the Gnarls. These confederations can call upon additional bands of warriors such as Fenblades, more common in the south, and Longriders, more common in the north, who take up new arms and a more committed way of war for the good of all Trollkin kind, rather than for just their Kriel. However, with the press of enemies, drastic times have forced the Trollbloods to take unprecedented action, and some confederations of southern Trollkin, especially those found in Signar, openly allied with each other who, along with many isolated Kriels, formed the United Kriels under Madrak Ironhide, the greatest of the Kriel chieftains. Taking lessons from their erstwhile Signaran enemies, though some Trollkin consider them to be enemies still, the warbands of the United Kriels are a sophisticated organization with specialist companies and an informally established hierarchy amongst the senior-most war leaders. Madrak himself commands the greatest host, which includes both traditional warbands based on the individual Kriels and newer innovations brought on by the changing dynamics within the Kriels and adaptations to technologies not of Trollkin make. The hope for the future is for the Northkin Kriels to join them, while they still may. Whether they answer to the commands of Madrak or not, the Trollkin warlocks are so because of the uniquely Trollblood facets that by strength of blood are they intimately tied to the other Trollkin species, and not necessarily because of any magical ability they may display. Instances such as Gunbjorn show this. Though he was no sorcerer or shaman by birth or vocation, his becoming a warlock was as much as predestined, the power making itself known to all the moment he drew near to the full blood and dire trolls under Madrak's command. The warlocks also count amongst their number a Fellcaller, a bandit outcast, a former bounty hunter, and even a simple smith. However, many of the Kriel's warlocks are indeed shamans, using their connection with the Trollbloods side by side with their innate magical talents, gifted from the Great Mother. Don't let the label of shaman confuse you, though, since these are Trollkin that we speak of. While some are quite shamanic in their conduct as a human would understand it, others aren't quite like that. Calandra Truthsayer is a wanderer, and so her Kriel, if one chooses to call it that, is her disparate band of followers and her loyal warriors, who all gravitated to her for different reasons, but fight alongside her and each other with fierce dedication. But while one might call Calandra merely eccentric for a Trollkin shaman, Borka Kegslayer is plainly notorious, despite the affections he holds amongst the Kriels that he encounters, possessing the personality of a Fellcaller matched only by an irrepressible devotion to Dunya. Despite such a personality, and though a northern Trollkin, against all expectations he values the advice and leadership of Madrak, considering him a worthy ally and leader. The Northkin are not so allied with each other as their southern cousins, and some are incredulous at the lack of Kriel rivalry, believing it weak and beneath the dignity of a good Trollkin. But many, including Borka, hope that the Trollkin race may one day be fully under one banner, and safe from the myriad enemies who have forced them to fight just to survive. Times have only gotten worse though, and for all their personal might, collective prowess, and the hopes of unity, the Trollkin face more and more threats that they cannot defeat alone. But they have allies, thank Dunya, even if some come from unexpected corners. Every so often one can encounter a small cohort of those who sell their services in the wilds of Imoran for coin, like their sellsword colleagues of the Iron Kingdoms. Many fight for the trolls too, should they but ask. But the service of these minions is of a thoroughly mad sort, that they willingly place themselves in the ranks of all manner of beasts and brutes. They largely wander as they please, serving who they choose to, and remaining independent of one another. Thus these minions exist as separate agents, not adhering to any secret agreement or organization. Those that do are the exception and not the rule. Indeed, most have their own agenda, and while they sell their services, many do so to further personal goals, whether selfish, magnanimous, or neither. Consequently, it should come as little surprise that there are very few of these such minions who survive through their wits, strength of arms, intimate knowledge of who they sign on with, or sheer audacity. More often than not, though, they have some combination of the above. A notable exception to this is Dahlia Halir, who, though she has no qualms about fighting for various causes, does not actually bear arms, or, well, fight per se, leaving all such messy business to her guardian, as she calls him, Scarath. No matter what one thinks of her battlefield capabilities, she is undeniably eccentric. Some might even say she is quite plainly insane to find companionship in a tatzelworm. As far as elves are concerned, she is a stark contrast to Lanissa Rasil, a vengeful Nis, and to say that she has a grudge against Everblight and his servants would be a great understatement. Everything she does comes with the purpose of fighting against the dragon that destroyed her people. Of a more conventional variety of minion who deals with the factions in the wilds, Victor Pendrake is the scholarly sort, though one would do well not to underestimate him simply because he bears the title of professor. He was once a mid-ranking officer of the Signaran army and has the savvy to have acquired and be able to wield an Orgoth sword. And yet any client of his will tell you freely that his sharpest weapon is his mind. Indeed, as his many published journals show, he is well equipped and well trained to deal with almost any situation, no matter what he encounters. So much has he seen in his travels across Imoran. At the other end of the spectrum is the strange entity known as the Totem Hunter, an amphibious-looking creature of unknown origin except that it is not a native of Imoran. Communicating through vague gesture alone, many commanders and warlocks only realize its intentions when appearing suddenly close by and saluting them by some means, before vanishing again to take an enemy head or three. It does not cooperate in any strict sense, wishing to always prove its skill above all others, and it does not demand payment, instead always content to pick through the debris of battle to find suitable trophies from its kills. As to the Totem Hunter's goal in being in Imoran at all, none can say. Thus do minions make a motley group, though nothing links them but their willingness to fight for any master or none should they so choose. But what has been mentioned thus far is but a sample of those famous or infamous allies of unknowable convenience, each bringing various amounts of ruthlessness, madness, or terror to the fights that they attend.